and imagine a mentally healthy person. And it was quite interesting there because just simply changing mental health to mentally healthy generated all these positive associations. So people said, oh, they'd be confident, smiling, capable, able to get along with, and all these sorts of things, all very positive characteristics. So we also knew then that we wouldn't be talking about mental health to people at that stage, we'd be talking about keeping mentally healthy. And it was interesting then that we asked people, well, what keeps people mentally healthy? And people talked a lot about just doing things, keeping active. And like one woman who had actually lost her husband a couple of months before we were speaking to her, she said, well, I get up in the morning and I feel down and depressed and all that. And then I think if I don't go out and do something, I'll go mad. So I get up, I walk down the street, I go to the post office, I go to the shops, I say hello to people, and then I get home and I clean up the garden and so on. So they talked a lot about just doing things. And the other thing they talked about was having good friends. Friends that you can cry on their shoulder when you want to, but other times get good advice from them and things like that. Which actually reminded me of that cartoon where the guy sitting at the bar and he's saying, oh, the cow died, the crops have failed, dried up, no water and that. And the barman says, cut it out, mate, this is happy hour. So people also knew those things too, because they said, friends are good, but you can't carry on too much and wear other people out. And they also talked about doing things that make you happy. And they realised that, well, happiness was not just buying a Porsche or a Coca-Cola or what the marketers told her, the advertising and so on. Although some of the marketers, when I mentioned that to them, they said, well, people are just buying the wrong things. You can buy happiness if you buy this. But what people talked about, real happiness, was doing things for other people that was really good for them. And so people talked about, the kid next door was coming up for their exams. They weren't doing too well, but I'm a maths teacher, so I took on, gave some tutorial, and the kid passed and the family were very happy about that. And also, so doing good things for other people, as well as accomplishing things yourself. By, I remember when I went back and tried to learn the guitar, very frustrating, but once you'd learned a little bit of a melody or something, you felt really good about it. So people talked about all of those sorts of things, and when we came to having a brand for our campaign, I said to the couple of people with me, well, this mental health area is pretty complex, pretty tricky, so we've got to come up with something that is as simple as ABC. And as soon as I said that, all the penny dropped of all the things that people had been talking about. So I said, what starts with A? And I thought, well, everybody talked about keeping active, about doing something, getting out, whatever it might be. So that was easy. And then I said, well, what about B? And I said, well, people talked about friendships and connections and community. So that's all about belonging. So it was belong. And then the third one was, well, what about C? And people said, well, that's, putting your heart into something, achieving something, doing something good for other people. Well, that's committing yourself to things, commitment to a purpose. So that's how we came up with the campaign that was then called Act, Belong, Commit. And the campaign since then has gone certainly around Scandinavia, and they call it there the ABCs for mental health. And that's one reason why I'm happy to be in the Isle of Man, although Gillian had always said if you're nearby, come in. But I've just been over in Denmark and the Faroe Islands and so on, talking to them about how their campaign is going for the ABCs of mental health. So anyway, these days, at least back in Australia, and certainly in Western Australia, people are very much aware of doing things that keep them mentally healthy, keep them resilient, and those sorts of things. And one of the things I could mention there is, if you go back to the Proverbs, the early ads that I wrote for this, I used things like use it or lose it. Grandma was an expert in mental health. Grandma said, use it or lose it. Get out in the garden, you know, read a book, do this, do that, do something else. And the health experts have finally caught up with it, and they're now tell you that is actually good for your mental health. And Aunt Sally knew a thing or two about mental health too. She said, "'Tis better to give than receive." Well, when I was a kid, I thought, hey, hang on, she's got it the wrong way around. Much better the other way. Now I'm grown up a bit, I realise what she actually meant. I look after these delinquent kids for several hours a day, which is a real pain in the butt. But I get home at the end of it and I think, boy, I did something really good today, and those kids really enjoyed it, they learned something and all the rest of it. So we actually fed back to people things that they already had an inkling about, but nobody had ever validated it for them. And of course, once we validated it like that, people then picked up and did a lot more of those sorts of things. And so when I came upon Gillian's bingo, the Smashing bingo now, there are so many elements in there about things that are good for your mental health. There's a lot of education and teaching in there about physical health aspects, but the whole idea of coming together in a big group like this to take on the challenge of learning this sort of stuff and sharing it with other people and so on is really a prime classic example of doing the sorts of things that keep you mentally healthy. So I think the Smashing bingo is a great idea of a way to get across both the information and those other sorts of things. So much better than sitting around having a boring lecture giving you a whole list of things to do. So as an act of kindness, I'll finish up now and let you get on with the game.
Thank you.